different pathways for enhancing the women's labor force participation rate. I've already sent enough content in the pre-reads, so I'll not go into the context setting, and immediately introduce Vikram and Vandana. So we have Vandana, who is the head Skills and Livelihoods Girl Capital at the Children's Investment Fund Foundation. Vandana leads the Girl Capital portfolio for India at SIF that focuses on school to work transition for girls and young women. She comes with more than 12 years of experience in skill development from private and government sector. Prior to SIF, she worked at NSDC, the nodal agency for the Government of India for Skilling and Entrepreneurship, and designed many innovative partnership products, including the Skill Impact Bond, which was launched in 2021. We have Vikram Jain, Managing Director, FSG. With over 25 years of consulting experience, Vikram has led several projects in undertaking the needs of low-income urban customers and in identifying the market-based opportunities to improve their lives. He's currently leading the FSG's program to improve private early education, which aims to replace ROT with activity-based learning in all 3 lakh affordable private schools in India, and FSG's Growing Livelihood Opportunities for Women program, which aims to sustainably place 1 million plus women from households with low income in jobs by shifting company mindsets and practices. I've shared the session flow with all of you, but I'll just repeat it here. So we will have Vikram discuss about the findings of the GLOW report, and then we'll have Vandana also mention about the SIF's intent of supporting the GLOW initiative and what is the pathway that they're looking at, the future perspective that they're looking at in terms of looking at a different perspective of women's livelihood. We will then break into breakouts where we will try and address the 3 questions that I had shared with all of you over email. There'll be a few handouts that will also be shared by the FSG team. So now I hand over to Vikram to take forward and share with us the findings of the GLOW report. Thank you, everyone. Over to you, Vikram.
Thank you. I think I'm fairly loud, so can hold the mic. Welcome, everyone. So 2 parts to this session right now. One is I want to share some findings. There's a report. If any of you don't have it, please feel free to sort of pick one. We just finished interviewing 6,600 women to understand their hopes, aspirations, and challenges related to livelihoods. So I want to share a few findings from that. And the second thing I want to talk about is what can people who are interested, the stakeholders who are interested in increasing women's. Okay, sure. Is this on? Yes. Yeah? Okay. The second part is what can stakeholders do to add women to the workforce. So I have a short presentation. Next slide. I think a lot of us have seen this data. Our participation rate for women has been falling. We are, according to World Economic Forum, among the bottom 5 countries when it comes to women's economic empowerment and participation. Below countries like Saudi Arabia and Ethiopia. Next slide. So what we want to do is we want to sustainably add 1 million women to the workforce. So that's our vision, and specifically in 6 years, we want to show that in 2 or 3 high growth industries, we've been able to add 100,000. And the idea is if the companies have been able to add 100,000 jobs, then hopefully in the next 4-5 years, the industry will pick up the practices and sort of roll it out and scale it up on its own. Next slide. So when we start any of our programs, one of the things is to understand what does the target customer want. So what do women want? Are they looking for jobs? Are they interested in these livelihood opportunities? Which are the sectors they are going after? I mean, there is a lot of, I guess, women naturally get casted into care roles or support roles, but what are their other hopes and aspirations, and which are the industries are they amenable to working in? The first interesting finding for us was 85% of women from low-income families have not gone to college. So if you want to improve the participation of women in India today, you have to do something about women that are 10th and 12th pass. If you want to meaningfully change the number, unless these women get jobs, so it's not enough to talk about science, may we need more women, or engineering, may we need more women. It's very much how are you going to increase participation of women who are 10th and 12th pass. Next slide. Some other interesting findings. I mean, there are a lot more in the report, but some things I wanted to highlight. So first, almost all women, 84% of them said that they needed permission to take up a job. The family attitudes are progressive in theory, but not in practice. By that, what I mean is, in addition to speaking to the women, we ask the women, who is the key decision maker in your household? So, either it was the father or the husband or whoever, 80% of the time it was a male member. And then we later on spoke to a subset of those individuals, and through that, what we found was they believed that it is great for women in society to work. But when it comes to women in their own household, they'd rather prefer that they stay at home. So that's the distinction. Um, Women, interestingly, have internalized childcare as their responsibility, and actually only 11% of women from low-income families are even willing to use paid childcare. One of the questions that, when we were conducting the survey, we had reached out to a whole bunch of philanthropists to see, was there any question you wanted us to ask the women? Since we are going out and interviewing 6,600, might as well get it. There were a lot of thoughts around, hey, can you check about what is their needs around childcare? Because it seems like childcare seems to be a big block. But interestingly, childcare, even if you were to provide affordable childcare to women, it's not like they're willing to use it. They've internalized it as their own responsibility. They mistrust the quality of childcare out there. Only 1% of them have used this service. And in fact, they find solutions around it. So they have family members, etc., who perhaps can take care. The fourth one is also very interesting. Most families prefer entrepreneurship, but women prefer jobs. What's the background to this? Like, the background is, after overcoming all these barriers, taking all the permissions from family members, now if I go out and work, and let's say there is a negative surprise in my earning, if I'm self-employed or whatever, I'll be immediately asked to quit that and come back to household chores. So like, it will be like very much like I told you so. So in their mind, and from the family, it's like, even if it doesn't work out, I want to make sure she takes care of household chores. So families prefer that women take entrepreneurship, whereas women themselves want jobs. Next slide. But despite all this, I think what was very heartening was most women wanted to do jobs. Despite this, they said they are either in jobs or they are looking for jobs. A lot of them believe that even if they have children, they can still work. A lot of them said even as young as 6-year-olds, we are happy to work. We'll find our ways around it. They want to do this because they want to be self-reliant. They want to support their family. They want to spend on their child's private education. And we also ask questions about the workplace, like, are you comfortable working in a male-dominated area? And most said, yeah, we are fine. Are you willing to pick up new skills? Are you willing to sell products in a store? For all of those answers, a lot of the women said yes. So in some sense, they are keen, they believe they have the skills, and they're willing to pick up new skills if required. Next slide. So then the question is, I mean, luckily on the demand side, so this is all about the supply of talent, right? Despite restrictions, women want to take up jobs, and lo and behold, there are millions of jobs out there which are more than happy to pick up 10, 12 past people, and yet in these industries, the participation of women is only 5%. Warehousing, packer, picker, documentation roles, flexi staffing, retailer, telecalling agent. last mile delivery, the person that comes to deliver your packet, etc. So all of these industries are labor intensive. With the shift to online trade are also sort of picking up. The growth rates are very high, yet participation of women is only 5%. Any thoughts why?
The first forward is the physical jobs, right? So they assume that there's less kind of, if I'm a family person, I may not necessarily want my bicycle, you could have a motorcycle, delivery between houses.
Physical, if you are delivering a Swiggy order,
Okay, there are two parts. So physical is the warehouse backup part.
packing is physical,
Perception, I don't know. Maybe company thinks that.
perception. Next slide. So, interestingly, from the company's perspective, when you look at this problem, the companies face a lot of barriers. I think the most important one was mentioned by the gentleman here. The companies, the managers in these companies, warehouses have been around for decades. They've always had men. So now suddenly to say that you want to introduce women, there'll be all sorts of questions. Do the women even want these jobs? It starts from there. I have not asked anyone, but I presume that women don't want these jobs. Will the women be effective in these jobs? I have never hired anyone, but I presume they are not going to be as efficient as men. And if I've overcome both of those, I still don't know where to hire women and how to retain them because I've never done so in my life. So within the organization, there are a whole bunch of challenges. Then you go to the next slide. How do I hire? There aren't any women on the job platforms. A lot of them is dominated by males. Women look for jobs through our research we found from word of mouth marketing. So unfortunately that's not there. Public goods, there are societal biases. Your husbands are preventing you. What can I do as a company? I want to hire you, your husband doesn't want to allow you. So what do? I don't even know how I can change my practices. I don't know which segments of women to go after because that knowledge is not known. These are all new industries where women have not been hired. And then, of course, there are laws which are also highly gender inequitable. Women cannot work after certain times, men can. We offer women a lot of maternity leave, which obviously is great, but in the labor market, it positions them very uncompetitively compared to men. So, as a business owner, I might always think twice before hiring women. Next slide. Now, the interesting thing about this is a lot of these barriers or challenges, unfortunately, the firm cannot address. What apparently seems such a simple problem that hire women, when you dig deeper, you find it's very difficult because for the company, there's an insufficient risk adjusted return. I don't know if there are benefits of hiring women. I go through the process of, going out there and hiring women and trying it out. And God knows if it works out or not. Why should I take that risk? There are other cheaper alternatives. I can hire men. I'm used to hiring men. I've been doing this for 50 years. It's very cheap. I know how it's done. There's a free rider problem. I build my workforce on women. Competitors come and poach. So why should I invest? Of course, there are common issues like can we show women in more progressive roles like delivery agents, etc., and just carry on common advertisements around this. But for that, the competitive instinct comes in. The firms don't collaborate necessarily. Then there's also if we were to come up with these gender equitable practices within an organization, think of a large warehouse organization. Who should do it? Should it be the operations team? Should it be the HR team? Should it be a special ops? Where do I pilot? If I pilot there, who's going to compensate? So for the firm internally, think of a large company, it's very difficult to pin it on someone कि नहीं ये आपका काम है कि इसमें women आनी चाहिए. And unfortunately, the society is not asking, unlike climate, where shareholders are going and saying, what's your carbon footprint? How are you planning to reduce it? Nobody is asking about gender. So what's the motivation to sort of even pursue this? Next slide. So what we feel is one way to overcome a lot of this is to have someone who can sort of act as an industry facilitator, which is what we are doing. We are not going out and sourcing women for our partners. We are not going out and sort of providing them with channels or even hiring women ourselves. What we are saying is, can we de-risk these problems for the companies? Can we go invest philanthropic money, find out the solution to these answers, and give them spoon-fed to a partner? So it becomes extremely easy for them to roll it out. So they don't have to bear all these costs. Of course, it optically also looks a bit odd because in some sense you're saying, I want to help the largest corporations and please philanthropy pay me money. But at the same time, unless you impact the largest corporations, the numbers won't come in. Right? So there is that tension. And interestingly, a lot of the solutions that we are seeing to this is people have been investing a lot in training. Now the problem is if you train women, especially for these roles, first of all, you don't need training. For a packer, picker, there is no training needed. Even if you trained a lot of women and put them in this pipeline for towards the company, they would come out of the other end. Why? Because the practices and mindsets in the companies are gender inequitable. So what we want to do is literally put a plug at the other end. Women that come in, stay. Increase the pool within the company of those women. So a whole bunch of things like, I'll give you a practical example, next slide. So we've come up with a whole bunch of interventions by speaking to 6,600 women, understanding what they want, speaking to over 20 companies, 100 managers, understanding their biases, coming up with a whole bunch of solutions, and then saying which of these increase gender diversity and which are sort of on a cost basis easy and cheap to invest. Next slide. And then literally making a simple roadmap for our warehouse company. So if you take a warehouse company saying, okay, let's start with job roles where the perception that a woman does well is already high. So sorting, packing and documentation में everybody believes that women are doing well. I don't know why. But नहीं वो diligent होते हैं उसमें वो काम कर सकते हैं. So okay, hire there first. Then they'll say, okay, but we don't get women. So okay, fine, what you can do is put women specific ads and you will get women. Now once the women come in, there'll be a little bit of learning both for the manager and for the women because this warehouse is now getting introduced to women. So best is to have a HR manager that is female to help transition or make the initial onboarding smooth. Now once you do this, interestingly all of these interventions don't cost anything because you're replacing a male with a female and all of these others are nothing but simple zero cost ideas. Once you do this and you're 2 months into it, the manager starts to notice some of the benefits. So the new interviewed manager, what did they say? They said like, look, one, I've got my hiring cost down because women retain longer. The second thing I'm seeing is that the productivity has gone up because women are more diligent. Packets are going on time. There is no lost package. Now imagine a 5 lakh square foot warehouse. If a packet falls out of a cart, it's like, where is the packet? And there are teams that go and locate such lost packets because if it's not where it's supposed to be, who knows where it is? Has it been stolen or whatever? And then the third thing they said was that the work culture on the job floor has improved. There was a lot of foul language being used at the warehouse earlier. Pick this, do that, blah, blah, blah. And now that women are there, they're told once they do the job, men have started falling in line. The productivity of the warehouse has gone up. And of course, if you carry on this journey, then you can easily increase the participation. So now what we are doing is, having done these pilots and seen success, taking these ideas to every warehouse company in India and saying, we'll help you become gender equitable. Ye raha answer. If you need our help in the change management in the organization, we are also happy to support you on that. And we believe by doing this, we can take the industry from 5% to 10%, which by 2030 would mean that 1 million women are added into the workforce. Next slide. So to date, we have signed up 19 companies as partners. Collectively, these companies employ more than 500,000 people. and less than 2% are women. So if in these companies, so these companies have agreed to go on this journey with us to become more gender equitable and increase participation of women. A whole bunch of practices have been piloted. Our partners have increased women headcount by 41% compared to the industry number, which is about less than 20%. 2,500 additional jobs have been added because of this. Um, that's it. With that, I'll pause. Any questions, thoughts? Yeah.
So, for me, a lot of conversation that what we're seeing is more like, okay, let's make a company de-risk hiring women, right, in terms of outside. Have you done any research to find out that, okay, what is the financial benefit of hiring a woman? So, let's assume that the classic CEO is like, I'm concerned about profit and loss. So, can you come up with some sort of number that say, okay, if you hire more women on the shop floor, this is the upside?
Yeah. So we're documenting the business benefits. Now, unfortunately, some of these softer benefits are not even captured, like improved productivity.
Yeah.
It'll have to be a year for us to meaningfully say that, okay, last year when women were not there, the efficiency per head was this much.
Right.
And now that women have been introduced, the efficiency is this much.
Right.
So some of those, absolutely, it's on our horizon to capture. In fact, one of the biggest ideas is to document the business benefits,
Right.
because you can then take that. And once you have done this in 6 or 7 warehouses, it's very easy for the CEO to tell the other 29 warehouses, ये तो करना ही है.
So we are read some article that said, okay, that a lot of women are hired in electronic assembly line because their hands tend to be smaller. That's
Yeah.
part. But the thing is, they tend to do more fine work because of the size of their hands. So
Yeah.
that's I mean, kind of a counterproductive thing. But the point is that
No, fair point. I mean, at the end, it's diligence, attention. So we are trying to document those. But yeah, fair point. Any other question? Yeah.
In the study, has it been because you're looking at a complete age group of 18, I think 15 to 59.
Yeah.
Is there a further segregation on, what certain cohorts would look at certain kind of jobs? And if you're looking at warehouse, and I'm going by the question from there, is that while we are working with one of the schemes as apprenticeship scheme in UP, we've seen that, while our target was 10%, we have nearly 50 to 60% in COPA, what they call COPA, computer operators and program assistants. And that's a huge number. So based on, how you're looking at this in terms of warehouse, is that something where, you've gone and searched, looked at various different business
Demographics.
different business models in terms of companies, and then segregated saying that, warehouse is where, women, because if you're looking at 30 to 40-year-old, maybe fair enough. If you're looking at a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old, may not be. Then a computer application kind of a job might be more
Yeah.
apt.
Fair question. I think we looked at it the other way around. We looked at industries and we said, for these industries, who is most suitable to come and adopt those? So, in fact, in the report, Sujata, help me, there is a segmentation slide. It's a fairly technical slide, but since you ask, I'll point the audience to it somewhere in the back of page 20. Okay, great. Yeah, on page 20 you see a fairly complicated chart on the left which basically says there are segments of women, and because we've captured a whole bunch of variables, we are able to analyze which segment of women at what age group with what demographics is amenable for what sort of job role. So what this does is it helps our partners to say that don't focus on women that have certain attributes and focus on women that have certain attributes that would lead you to reducing your cost of hiring women. And these are the women who are also amenable to picking up this role.
And sorry, just to add, the reason for picking these roles, so these are the jobs that are these are the industries that are creating the most number of jobs. So that was one reason for prioritizing. And like Vikram said, 85% of the women have not even gone to colleges. So some of those IT, BPO kind of roles they don't even qualify for those roles. So that was the reason for looking at warehouses, last mile, staffing, etc.
Yeah?
You mentioned earlier that there isn't the same kind of pressure on companies to look at the gender equity issue as there is, say, for example, climate. I'm curious whether you looked at that cross-section of climate-related adaptation industries and the potential role of creating jobs for women within that industry.
We did not. So our approach to selecting the industry, since both the questions are related to industry selection, I'll touch upon that, was basically where is the biggest potential. So there are a lot of jobs being created, and sure there are intersectionality, etc. But we want to add 1 million jobs. Right? The moment you say 1 million jobs, and then you look at the entire logistics and flexi staffing industry, that is today at 9 million. Right? So if that's your ambition, then you have to go after large sectors which are expected to grow by 30 to 50% in the next 5-6 years, so that if you are able to increase the participation even by 5%, you are able to add 1 million jobs. Now, of course, there are a lot of other, like you rightly point, climate and some of the intersectionalities, but potential to add women, especially from low income backgrounds that are 10th and 12th pass, is very low. So I keep repeating, I think we're looking to see how we can add 1 million women from low income backgrounds into jobs. Yes.
Firstly, wow, this is like so relevant because, like I was telling you, in Pune, we are doing a specifically logistics placement program for low income people. I have two questions. One is that this kind of post placement kind of toolkit, if I can term it that has been created, are people sure there isn't an economic cost to it, but still there is a time cost to it and an intent cost to it. So are people actually adopting it? That's first. And second thing is that apart from those, first 6 months there were 5 things, then 6 to 12 months there was. But apart from that, especially in like a Swiggy and a Zomato, there are other quality of work related concerns for which one needs to do advocacy, related to how much of the salary is increment versus fixed, the shift system and all of, incentive versus fixed and all. So are you also looking at doing those kinds of advocacy, because that would be incredibly useful?
Yes, absolutely. I think to the first question, which was, if I understood correctly, are these companies interested? Right? And yes, they are. I think we are getting a lot of leadership time, and there is a spectrum. So I don't want to say everybody falls into black and white. Some are very keen. We have monthly calls. We have on the ground teams which are working with us on a weekly basis. And some want the answers ready. And that's also interesting. This is my sort of third market-based program. I've done one in housing and one in education, where we again use private sector to simulate the market. What happens is the biggest players don't have time or patience for experimentation. So think of the largest warehousing companies. What they would say is, Vikram, figure out the answer and let me know. And interestingly, they'll pick up your answer and roll it out themselves because they're fairly smart. These are highly paid executives, very smart, know how the business works. So for us, we typically start by signing up small players who are keen, want to position themselves as a gender solution provider, etc. Figure out with them what the answer is, make the roadmap, and then sort of just circulate with leaders and say, this is the answer, do you want to roll it out, we can help you. And they're keen to do that. So there's a variation. To the second one, absolutely. So some of our partners, for example, have incorporated period leaves where women are paid even on days, 2 days in a month based on the average pay, which otherwise men aren't. So some of these things are being done by hyperlocal companies to encourage more women to participate. They also run into other challenges where if they make the package very sweet, then men start impersonating as women. Yeah, because these are all digital, everything is onboarded digitally.
There's no one checking on a day-to-day basis.
On a day-to-day basis, I don't know. So the woman might just create the login and their husband, brother, whatever, will be delivering. And then, so now they've introduced a system where after every 5 deliveries, you have to take a selfie. I mean, everything can be gamed, right? I mean, if you want, if you're intending to game, then there are a lot of ways. But these are also the realities. So it's not that the intention is not there. You also have to see the market dynamics in these industries and how they work out. And which brings me to the last point. These are some of the things, because we are neutral and we are not a player, we can go and tell the government. Whereas if these players went, like I'll give you the housing example, every housing developer in those days said, अगर low income घर बनाना है तो हमको subsidy दो. We went and told the government no giving any subsidy because they are going to pocket it. What you have to do is but give them fast approvals. Why? Because that increases the supply of low income housing. If on average other developers take 18 months, you give them 3 months में approval. What's the harm? They are building it on their own cost. They are increasing supply, which means prices will stabilize. So we are able to figure out what the core problem is and suggest interventions to government also. Hopefully we'll do that in the coming years. Yeah.
So I just had a question around the supply side. Now I understand the various interventions on the demand side
Yeah.
to get women and to retain women. But in the earlier part of your presentation, you also spoke about some of the real challenges in the community where women themselves have gender stereotype notions about their work, and the decision making is mostly with the husbands and fathers and mostly in-laws also. As a part of the GLOW initiative, what is the ecosystem level intervention at the supply side? Because you can pull women out, but there are so many societal level push factors that are driving women out
It's
of the workforce.
very, very hard to do supply interventions. I would love to. Budgets. So, why Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao? Why does it stop there? Beti Swavalambi Banao. Right? So, those are the campaigns. Why are in the textbooks women being shown as caregivers? Why are men not shown as caregivers? Right? So there are those interventions, there are those suggestions. In fact, the report mentions some of this in the recommendation section. Can I influence them? Probably not. But can you influence them? Probably yes. Right? You in the room have better connects with government, more influence, more partnerships. What can you do? How can you tell the government that it's okay to allow women to work late at night? Right? I mean, in some states there are 19 regulations that you need to manage if you want to hire women after 8. And imagine the cost of those. Because every one of them is a rent-seeking mechanism, if not anything else. Yeah.
No, I have just like the example you take, and I'll just pick this example that we're saying women should not be in office after a certain time. Now you can advocate and let that regulation off, but the fact is that needs to come with an alternative regulation also, that women must be safe at work. It's not a binary linear thing, right? Similarly, in the definition of the problem, I was also wondering the fact that in the last decade there's been a massive decline in workforce has also been correlated to the fact that family incomes are increasing. And then in a lot of families, the income increasing actually encourages the women to drop off. And that comes again sometimes from, very convoluted social norms that are very well packaged, to sometimes the woman saying, I'm tired and it's a blurry line. Where has that been factored here? Now, that's one. I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot. This is the last thing here. When we're talking about filling in women in workforces, one thing that I keep missing is at the interview stage, are we having women sit in? Because a lot of biases do get addressed simply by having the interview process have women sitting in there. And that in itself has a lot of impact, no matter how biased the process is, simply because the one who's making a decision is a woman. Where are these 2-3 things being factored when you're making these plans?
So 3 points. One was on safety, one was the recruiting process, and the second one was...
I said that when we are addressing one thing, it comes with,
Yeah.
there is an alternative. You can't just pick out one.
No, absolutely. And I think within these workforces, like if you go to some of these warehouses, it's like a factory. It's very well lit, etc. So it's not that they are not okay. They are even happy to provide pick up and drop facilities. So we are not saying that, just allow this. But the fact that you're not allowing or you need special permission to even do this in some of the states, acts as a barrier. Uh, I think I absolutely agree. Having women in the recruitment process will definitely help. I think that comes after you have decided that you want to hire a woman. Otherwise, you're not even looking at their CVs. They're sort of going away. In fact, there is one intervention where in promotion, it's talked about a lot. Like if there are 4 candidates and only one of them is a woman, then the chances of women being selected are 0. But if there are 2 women, then somehow the bias equals and everybody's percentage of getting selected comes down to 20%. So a lot of such interventions which could help. But I think at the entry level, we still need those women to be coming in. Yeah. Last, and I do, sorry.
My question was pretty much related to her last point is
Huh.
that do you do advocacy to these hiring companies to have women in the decision-making power? Because otherwise it's not sustainable.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
can put in
absolutely.
the chain, but on top level, if there is no understanding, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. I mean, our aim is to increase participation, whatever it takes. And, thanks for the, lovely ideas, definitely, yeah.
So if I'm allowed to ask some questions,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think I'm loud enough. No, thank you so much, and this is great. Very short questions, but more from the point of view if you're looking to implement similar kind of pieces or strategies in other markets. Question number one, what was really the points that you used to convince these supply side organizations? Because there's really no incentive for them to. I don't care. Let's move on. Everything's working fine. Why do I even have to spend 1 minute thinking about it, big or small? So I'm very keen to know that, and then I'll start thinking what to do in Bangladesh, because that's one. Second is to reach where you are right now. How much time did it really take for you? Like if you could briefly talk about, like we started with maybe first step was the assessment. With that assessment, you went to the organization, so maybe a bit of a journey. And the third was if you could paint a brief picture about this 6,600 sample. Who were these people? We can see, like, who are these women? We can see the split across 14 states, etc. But, like, what's their background? Where were they sitting? Because it might differ, Yeah, just thank you.
The third one is fairly easy. So third one is you stratified sampling is the technical term. Our research has been reviewed and approved by an institutional review board, which means the answers are representative of urban India. Right? So these are low income families, segments D2 and above, right?
Income less than 20,000.
Income less than 20,000. Family income. And then you sort of go to a locality, interview the first house, if you get the woman, then leave 3 houses, go to the next. So that's the approach. How did we convince these companies and what was the journey? So the interesting thing about this is, again, similar from the housing and education work. This is the point when you have the answer that people are interested. We've been doing this for the last 2.5 years and nobody's interested because it looks like a research project. आप जा रहे हो, किसी को interview कर रहे हो, क्यों interview कर रहे हो, पता नहीं, क्या निकलेगा, पता नहीं, exactly. Secondly, when you go to these companies, they are like, what's the answer? What should I do tomorrow morning? Tell me that, Vikram. And I'm telling them that, look, this is a societal problem. For you to increase your women's participation, you double your women's, it will take you 5 years. It's like, I don't even know if I'm going to be around for 5 years. So sometimes it has taken 12 meetings over 12 months of offering free advisory services to help them become gender equitable, and people saying no or people saying yes at the end of it. And simple things like, we want to say, all we are saying is that when we learn from you, we want to share some of the data so everybody else benefits. Why do you want to share the data? Lawyers get involved. Now, what is the lawyer's benefit of going on this journey? 0. Right? So I'm just giving you practically, it's very, very hard. In fact, that's why I'm saying the smaller companies are more nimble, less averse. ठीक है, साथ में experiment करते हैं, सीखेंगे. And किसी का तो भला होगा types, and so then that sort of takes the journey. But it takes a year or more. Now it is easy because you can take this roadmap. He can ask me 5 questions, लेकिन ऐसा क्या होगा? And because I'm working with 19 partners, I can say ऐसा होगा. And then he's like, okay, fine, I'm ready to work with you. So that also comes because now I have the experience, I know the commonly asked 10 questions. And if there's one question you don't know, you just say, okay, fine, we'll get back to you later. Any more? What I do want to do is sorry, I don't, that's it, I don't want to say anything more. So over to Vandana maybe. We do have a question, we'll circulate a questionnaire after this, but do fill it out. We want to know your perspectives also.
Thanks, Vikram. Thanks for sharing such great insights about the work so far, and thank you all for your participation. I'm Vandana Bahari, and for those who don't know me and the organization that I represent, I and my colleague Anindo, who's clicking the picture, we are from Children's Investment Fund Foundation. We are world's one of the largest independent philanthropic organization that works to ensure that every child in the world can flourish live and flourish in a healthy, safe environment now and forever. And in doing so, we work across 5 thematic areas: child health and development, girl capital and sexual and reproductive health and rights for women, climate and child protection. And the Girl Capital portfolio, which is supporting this initiative called GLOW, looks at the age group of 14 to 25, girls and young women, for their seamless school to work transition. And the 3 outcomes that we care for are averting the incidence of child marriage for women, delaying the age of first pregnancy, and improving labor force participation. And why an organization such as SIF cares for adolescent women or young women is because we want to solve the intergenerational issues of child health and development by empowering and building enough agency for young women so that they decide when to marry, when to have a child, and when to work and for how long. And what we do in Girl Capital is we look at 3 key stakeholders for us. One, of course, is the government. The second is community, and third is the private sector. It is very important for philanthropic organizations to really enable all the levers that exist in these 3 ecosystems, and we've chosen to work with all. From the government side, especially in the Girl Capital, we are supporting the enrollment and completion of girls in the secondary and higher education. How do we see that girls do not drop out of education and, get caught in the cycle of early marriage or early pregnancy? On the skill building side, to see that girls have the agency to choose their age of marriage or choose the age of first pregnancy and workforce participation. We work with government because the largest skilling programs are funded by government. So we work for both in-school and out-of-school skilling programs. But while we do so, it's also important to see and enable private sector for creating more employment opportunities for young girls. And that is where GLOW is so critical for all of us to really support such an initiative. Because unless, as Vikram said, unless we create those 1 million opportunities for women, we will not be able to shift the needle for improving the workforce participation for women. And how do we do that? Probably it's a proof of concept that we wanted to unbundle. We know some of these answers now, and it's been 2.5 years of journey for us to really identify, one, what was the mindset barrier? And as Vikram said, companies found it risky and challenging to hire women. And why? We understood those challenges and worked out some solutions, and we have some results. We know the solutions that will work, and we've proven some results around it. But as a philanthropic organization, we need more partners to join us and support this initiative, from taking 2,500 women to 100,000 and then 1 million number. And I think that is where the call for action is for us and GLOW initiative. How do we work together to see that it moves forward? It moves forward for us in a collaborative manner. We need your support to see that the learnings and insights are shared to a wider ecosystem. There are many partners, organizations who hire people. You are hiring, uh, people in your organization. How do you learn from what we know? How do you influence other partners, and how do you also fund it if you can, if you care for what we aim to achieve? So I think that is what we wanted to achieve, and we have what we propose now is to really hear your perspective or have your perspective on how could we go from here to the journey that we've set for ourselves. And we want a roundtable kind of a discussion with all of you. There'll be a set of 3 questions placed on each table for each one of you to help us know your perspective and help us guide us actually and have the conversation around. Yeah. I'll request if we can have one table with this group. Yeah.
So, I mean, the idea behind the questions was really to capture from your experience and what we have learned, or what we have shared today, what else could be done both on the demand and supply side. um, so I would suggest if you can have a discussion around the table, that will be great, but at the same time I want you each one to write their own answer, because the context and all, while we have shared some information, there's a lot of history etc people might have, and so it would be great if everybody can fill up their own answers. Of talent, right? Despite restrictions.
We're also diligent in filling out our paper. No, I mean, the reason why, I'm sorry, this first. The reason I asked the question about the lack of terminology behind the industry is that one thing the manufacturing law is logo, which is to, although I love that you have a specificity around the number of jobs and you've given some guardrails to the women that you are.
Yeah, I can hear you from
If you want to scan that, it'll give you everything. And when I say, I'd like to bring in our,
from the conversation.
yes, absolutely. You'll laugh at this, but I was at the India Pavilion COP in London, and it was a session on the steel industry in the India Pavilion.
That's a long one.
It is, but actually what I wrote down was the word prestige, right? How do you increase the prestige factor within a family unit?
Okay, 2 more minutes. Can we finish the responses, please?
Yeah, so some of the things
Appreciate your written notes, some of it fairly detailed. All the best.
What we will do is,
I mean, it's a journey, right? We all need to participate. So, yeah.
and we will summarize some of these feedback thoughts that you've shared and come back to you with this group to see how are we moving, and we'll keep sharing. We'll keep sharing to see and reconnecting with all of you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, great.